अश्नीर ग्रोवर ने कुछ बोला अंकुर वारिकू के बारे में, बट अंकुर वारिकू जी ने तो कुछ बोला ही नहीं वापस. He has said some not so nice things, and you have not chosen to react.
कोई फर्क नहीं पड़ता. I create this content is like 1998 में मेरे साथ ये हुआ था. Like sir हम तो उस समय पैदा भी नहीं हुए थे. Like until the student is ready, the teacher will not appear. But it's unfortunate that you need an accident to change your life.
Yeah.
Why should you have to wait for one?
Yeah, she said you are constantly getting high because you're not high enough on your own life. LSM podcast में हमारे next guest है अंकुर वारिको. Ankur is one of the most followed people on the internet in India today. This is an amazing episode if you want to delve into Ankur's childhood, his love for tennis, you want to delve behind the minds of some of the greats. We went into so many different topics, including Ankur's own meditation practice and Ankur's own approach and philosophy to life and how he gets millions of people to follow him. If you like it, please subscribe and share. Ankur, we are so lucky. I'm honestly saying we are damn lucky to have you on our Level Supermind podcast.
Thanks a lot.
And, you're one of the few people who speaks publicly about meditation, so it's a big honor, privilege, everything. I know you're a big, proponent, user and fan of the Calm app, but we are extremely privileged to have you.
Thank you so much.
I wanted to start off did you enjoy the Wimbledon finals?
I did. It was last year that we went for the first time. It was such a dream to go there, and it was a surreal experience. Absolutely surreal. I wish this year's final was last year.
Yeah.
Last
What a game.
Oh my God, what a game.
What's your take on our new champion?
At 20 to be at this point is just incredible. This is absolutely incredible. And coming back from one set down against Djokovic, my God.
The greatest.
Genuinely the greatest. It's...
And you study mindsets a lot. So what are the things you picked up from Carlos's mindset?
I think it was this natural curve that we all experience in life, which is, you're facing something which is difficult, it's challenging, it's overwhelming. So you're jittery in the beginning. And if you allow those jitters to take over you, then of course, game over. And there's nothing that you can do. You may be the best player on earth or whatnot. But if you compose yourself, it's like, you know what? That's perfectly fine. It's 6-1, job's over, first set down. I still have 4 more opportunities. And I have to just call my shots. And you compose yourself because you are in that final, or for that matter, wherever you are in life, because of a reason. It's not like somebody dropped you. Like, it's not just luck. At least he would know that it wasn't luck. And from that measure, it's just commendable how he composed himself and got himself back. So it's this lovely curve where you're nervous in the beginning when you're starting anything new or you're facing anything that's challenging, but then you recognize you're there for a reason and you got there through your hard work. It can still show up, and then you begin to rise up dhire, dhire, dhire karke. So I like the curve. The first 3 sets is a beautiful reflection. 6-1, Djokovic killing it. So that's like the nervous Carlos. And then 7-6, which is almost like a balance. Like, can I get there, not get there? And he gets there. And then 6-1, which is almost like Carlos, I'm in. I'm totally in. Like, this is a battle of equals now, and we'll see where it goes. Fascinating.
Yeah. Brilliant. And, you play tennis a lot.
I do.
So, I'm curious. I don't think I heard you speak a lot about, how you got into tennis. So I'm really fascinated about, your story of why did you pick up the sport in the first place?
It's had 2 phases in my life. So when I was in school, 9th and 10th standard, I used to stay in Delhi in this colony called Lajpat Nagar, which is a very Delhi colony made popular by Vicky Donor. And it's actually a true replica of what Lajpat Nagar is like. And the closest access, because tennis courts are like privileged, right? So the only access was this place called the City Fort Sports Complex. And this City Fort Sports Complex is this wonderful DDA or government property where there is a snooty side to it, which is like the club, we're all this and that. They pay thousands of rupees. But after 10 a.m. till 4 p.m., which is like the heat period, nobody shows up during that time, they used to charge 10 rupees for the entire access of the complex, which is incredible.
What a price.
Absolutely. So this is 96, 97. I'm really old. And
you're 42, I'm 36. So we are not that much. I was like, It's not that much.
Not that.
You're speaking to a grey-haired guy.
Yeah, like, but like I create this content is like 1998 में मेरे साथ ये हुआ था. Like sir हम तो उस समय पैदा भी नहीं हुए थे. Like or whatnot. But yeah, then I get these things, and that's where I used to go, and I don't know how or why I ended up picking up tennis. And I think the reason was because I used to play table tennis in school, which was the only decent. No, not competitively. Like just for joy. In school, and I was like decent enough to be in one of the school ranks or something, but never good enough to be in any district and so on. But that hand-eye coordination set in very early, and then lawn tennis was like this aspirational sport, and you've seen it, and it's very British-like and so on because Wimbledon was like the shit. So I picked it up. And then I think after 3 or 4 years, I gave up because life got busy and life took over. And then when we moved to our current complex where we stay, it happens to have a tennis court in the complex.
Moved to your current complex
in 2019.
Before you became the Ankur Warikoo.
Oh yeah. Before, I don't know what that means, but yeah, yes. And we moved to our current complex in 2015. When nearby had just started, and sports was a great way for me to unwind and to de-stress and so on. So my wife and I both started taking it seriously, and we're like zindagi ka armaan pura karenge, why don't we start taking coaching? So we took coaching for 2 years, and then 2017 onwards we just started playing on our own.
So how's your game?
I don't know how to measure it. I do play competitively in one of those छोटी सी leagues होती हैं, गुड़गांव की कुछ हो गया वगैरह. No, you'd reach like the quarters, the semis, and so on.
Okay, so you're good. Have you always been like a type A kind of guy?
No, I like.
Sorry, just one more thing. Like I was, I've seen a lot like simple upbringing and all. But I was like, इनका चेहरा देखेंगे ना तो बहुत अमीर दिखते हैं चेहरे से.
मुझे ना बहुत लोग ये बोलते हैं. And I don't know, like I get this a lot, including my wife. She's like, you look rich.
Yeah, you do.
So I don't know what that means because I know that I'm not. At least I wasn't for the longest time till we've gotten to that
till
point
you became the Ankur Warikoo.
Before
this is what it means.
Money is not a problem anymore, thankfully. But she's like, no, you look posh, you look rich, and I think it's two reasons generally. I think it's my fair skin, which I have no role to play in. That's thanks mom and dad, and two because I speak fluent English. Yeah. Which is a very strong proxy. It looks like
English is your first language.
Exactly.
It feels like that.
बोलते हैं. Exactly. And part of it is, of course, the convent education and blah blah. But part of it is also because I genuinely wanted to be good at English when I knew that I wasn't, and I worked hard at it, and thankfully it's gotten.
Amazing. You also remind me like this. Have a bit of a vibe of like Roger Federer. Is he your favorite player?
He is my favorite player, hands down.
Hands down. Is there stuff you take from him in terms of just?
I think the stuff that I take from him is not the tennis player he is, but the person he is, and I love that about him. It's somewhat close to how I feel about Shah Rukh Khan, where I don't see him as an actor. I see him as a person. Of course, I don't know anything of him, but whatever I've seen him from a distance publicly, he just looks like somebody who likes to give, likes to make people happy, knows that he is not the best, but somehow still believes that he's the best, and he has this nice thing going for him.
But he is the best.
No, he's the best in his head, and that's all that it takes.
Yeah.
Right? It's generally all that it takes. He may not be, and people will disregard him or diss him or whatnot, but he couldn't care less because he'll wake up every day believing that he's the best. And I like one interview of him where someone asked him, why do you think that you're the best? And he said, because if I don't believe that I'm the best, then nobody else will believe that I'm the best. And that's such a wonderful way of putting it.
Do you believe you're the best?
I don't think so. And that's where I constantly suffer from imposter syndrome. I'm perpetually living with it. So I've gotten good with dealing with that imposter and knowing that he just exists at the back of my mind. But I'm constantly very well aware that I am at the surface. There are only very few things that I know better than others. But mostly I'm just like a composition of, I'm like Honda City. It's not the best car in the world, but it just works. And people just like it.
That's big to say.
I strongly believe that.
I mean, for the amount that you have achieved relative to that 2019 period, it's big to say. And So do you have in your head like a version of you which is the my back of you? Or I don't know which car, but like, you know.
I'm not fond of cars, so I can't relate to that.
Yeah, no.
But no, I get your point. I'll rely and stand on the shoulders of others when I give the answer to this. So Matthew McConaughey, a wonderful speech acceptance where he says, the version that I want to be is me 5 years from now. And at that point of time, the version I would want to be will be me 5 years from now.
What does that look like?
I don't know. And that's the beauty of it. I've constantly been surprised by who I have turned out to be. So what I trust is the process, but I don't know where the process will take me. And the process has always been about be curious, be humble, and just show up every day. Just show up every day. And something will happen. Something will take you far. What I do believe in, and I genuinely say it, and I believe in it, is that I am worthy enough to be at a certain basic level. Maybe that level is higher than most others. Maybe it's lower than what I thought for myself. That's frankly immaterial. But I know that I'm not going to die of hunger or poverty or anything like that. I'm privileged enough and smart enough to take care of that and my family. But I don't have any higher ambition because there is no place I want to be. There's no place that I really want to be. I'm very nihilistic in that sense that I genuinely believe life has no purpose. And I don't think I was planted here to achieve something or do something. And once I'm gone, within a few years, I'll be forgotten. And there is nothing else to it. There's genuinely no other glory.
Do your best in this moment.
It just like, and it's not even the best. Just be yourself and enjoy yourself in that moment.
Yeah.
Because who knows what that best is. Like, I don't believe that when Roger Federer shows up, he says, do your best in that moment. It's like, just have the maximum fun that you can in this moment so that you don't regret that I wish I was someplace else. That was it. And I think that just shows up.
Yeah. Like, yeah, I agree with that. And, you know, if you see most of what Vedic concept around Karma Yoga is also based on is basically detached, dutiful work. Yeah. Not, you know, it's detached from the outcome. Okay. So you're doing, and what I mean by best is to the best of your duty or to the best of your ability in that moment, to the best of your faculty, not to say that, look, for a cup or for a prize or for a set of likes or whatever that may be, or for X amount of revenue. But in that moment, it's kind of like, you know, the analogy which you started with is the serve. So I am standing there now, I am serving this set, and I will do to the best of my ability on this set, which is what, you know, that does. And does a lot of, you know, like being in that now moment, being in that present moment. You spoke about Carlos, you know, shrugging off the 6-1 and then being in the moment. Second set starts, I'm here, it's almost even Stevens. You know, for you, when you're in that now moment, is meditation playing a role to bring you there?
Certainly, 100%. I've been meditating for
8 years now.
8 years now, ninth going, and I've had a streak of, I believe, close to 1,480 days now.
Wow.
And I love it. It's such an integral part of my life, of my day. What it has taught me the most is how to be mindful, how to actually be present, to recognize that you're getting distracted, acknowledge it, and then come back to the present. And it's beautiful how, just like any other thing that you do in life, it's habit forming. And when it forms that habit, it just stays and never goes away.
You know, with respect to habits, how does one, what is the beginner's guide to forming a habit?
I think the beginner's guide to forming a habit is just to persist for a period of time and go through that curve where it is seemingly very difficult. And just show up. Just show up. Don't expect a change. Don't expect any gratification. Don't expect any short-term success or feeling that will change what you're going through or what you set out to do in the first place or achieve. Just go through that grind. It's almost as if you are sadistic. You're putting yourself through pain, not knowing where it's going to take you, but trust the process of doing so. Working out, just simple. You go to the gym, and if you haven't worked out ever, it's going to be sore. you will feel like, I don't want to show up the next day, and you don't want to show up the next day, and you don't want to show up the next day, but show up the next day. Just show up. You're not going to lose weight. You're not going to build muscle in a week or a month. You're not going to experience perhaps any material impact to your body or perhaps even to your mental state. But just the act of showing up for a month will slowly begin to yield results. And you will begin to slowly see the impact of that. The reason why this is challenging, and particularly today's world, is because there is an entire generation, for no fault of theirs, who have been raised on instant gratification.
Yeah.
They do not recognize what it is to wait because there was nothing setting them up for that. Like, you come from a time which is closer to where I was
would
also
buy a
raised.
DTC ticket.
Exactly, right? And we would stand in line to do that. And it would take hours to get a phone connection and days to get a phone connection, or even a watch, or even a scooter. We would stand in line to buy milk. We would have Chitrahar and no on-demand television. Like, we had to wait for an entire week to watch our favorite movies and hear our favorite songs and so on. So it's not that we were very smart and gifted. We were trained on how to wait because of the world we were raised in. Today's generation was raised in a very different world, and for no fault of theirs, they have been not trained on the art of patience and waiting. So they do not know why they should persist through the grind.
That's another place, because this is something that you're absolutely right, is no fault of their own. We are in an environment where you put in a few words and an image is generated.
Yeah.
And you will put in a few words and an essay is generated. So instant gratification, and therefore the dopamine hits that come as a result of that, it's almost like it's so difficult to learn patience. The world is going against you to practice patience. So in such a scenario, how does one kind of palate what you're saying, which is that you are like, hey, you got to be persistent, hey, you got to show up every day, almost put yourself through this trouble to almost detach yourself from the outcome and don't expect anything. But here I am, in every part of life I'm seeing instant results. So why should I believe you? Or why should I even consider what you're saying? If that's the scenario, how would you recommend young people today to build patience?
That's a terrific question, and I love answering this question, recognizing that my answer may be half-baked or perhaps even impractical. One is actually the recognition that patience is important. And there is, when I use the word patience, two definitions of it. One is patience that is unnecessary. So, you know what? You actually don't have to be patient to write an essay anymore. You don't have to be patient to generate an image anymore. You don't have to be patient to watch a movie anymore. Because that's unnecessary patience. It's not fruitful patience. But you also need to recognize that the most important things in life, contentment, happiness, peace, tranquility, love, fulfillment, they will come through the long, hard grind. They're not going to come instantly because you haven't yet experienced any part of that, despite all the at-demand or on-demand things that you have in your life. So first is the recognition that patience plays an important role towards the most meaningful things, not the most trivial things. You want to order food and you want to have it instantly, please go ahead and order it from Zomato, Swiggy, and that's perfectly fine. You don't have to necessarily cook and be grandiose about it. But you want a healthy relationship with someone, you want to fall in love with someone, it's not going to happen with a one-night stand. It's not going to happen with just one date. It's not going to happen by just swiping right. It's going to take effort. And that will have to be put in. So you first need to recognize that. But the recognition itself is not going to lead you to that. So what you do is, you actually use this unnecessary patience that you have to your benefit. And the way that I would suggest that is, knowing very well that you can have things on demand, don't consume them on demand. Force yourself to wait it out for just a little bit, just to play this game. So it's almost like you're hungry, or you know what, you're actually not even hungry. You just feel like having ice cream. Have an ice cream, but have it after an hour. Don't have it right now. Don't be trigger happy and just press Swiggy on Zomato and just order it. Do it after an hour. Do it after 2 hours. Go ahead and do it. But don't do it right now. You want to watch a movie, you want to hear a song, don't play it at that point of time itself. Wait for 15 minutes. Wait for 20, 25 minutes. your body will crave for that shit. It will send out these signals that you are a dumb fool, you are stupid, why are you behaving this way, you don't have to do it, and just shut that noise down. And the more you're able to do it time and again, the better you will get at dealing with that craving when it irks you in that moment. So you still have your on demand, but now you are exercising control over it and not falling as a victim towards it. That I feel is the only way it can be done. Parents have it wrong because parents are like, अरे तुम्हें नहीं पता कि हम सैकड़ों किलोमीटर चल के स्कूल जाते थे, नदियों में तैर के और बस पकड़ के वो. They don't have to do that anymore. And it's stupid for you to be narrating that story because that's just so irrelevant to how their world is right now. But you could very well tell them that, hey, if your bus in the morning comes at 7 a.m., don't get up at 6:50. Get up at 6:30. And just take that moment to not rush into your day, but to wake up slowly. Just that small change. You don't have to sensitize them to exactly, right? Or meditate for 15 minutes, or just, you know what, forget meditation as well. Just sit with yourself with no phone, no book, no person, no music, no nothing, and just wake up slowly. These are the things that will have to resonate with the younger audience a lot more than forcing them a different way.
You know, even actually tying in what you're saying, I think that meditation has a big role to play in this also, because what meditation is doing is keeping your focus of attention on what you're doing. So it's training your mind to focus on one thing, whether it's your breath, whether it's your heart, whether it's your third eye, whether it's a mantra you're chanting, whether it's something you're visualizing. You're basically training your brain to follow one path, and being in that now, you know, being in that moment, serving that serve is about focusing on that serve, not about the trigger of the food. So you know, that is really where it's basically about training your brain to be in that moment, and then the trigger is almost, you're insulated against the trigger. So then you can choose the things that are easy for you when you want them. And that training process is, I think, you know, that's what we're trying to figure now. How do we, you know, one of the big challenges we face is, you know, two things. You know, people come in to meditate and they say, we've tried to create a nice introduction package, you know, like a 7 days and 21 days. People do it and then they come and say that, look, I've done it, but now what? But a lot of meditation is about repetition. So what would your advice be for that? You know, like people are coming in and they're like, I've finished. Now I'm expecting instant results in a way. I've done your 7 days. Now I'm expecting almost like I'll be a evolved version of myself. But you're on a 1400 day streak, 8 years. So it does take time because, you know, the neuroplasticity of the brain also takes time. But now then that sounds boring, you know, to tell people. Or they're not necessarily always vibing with that, or they don't want the patience or persistence. What would your advice be in that context?
You know, it's a very hard problem to solve because until the student is ready, the teacher will not appear. They wouldn't. And it's a classic conundrum when it comes to learning, and learning not just how to meditate or how to be tranquil in your life, but any other discipline where there will be an inordinate long period of time where you will not see any result. And as I said, you still have to show up. And how do you persist? And the only explanation, at least in my head, or the only way that I know, because that comes naturally to me, is you would just show up. It's almost like you don't have a choice. You want to do this because you know that the other side of it, or the alternate, is not something that you're okay with. So not surprisingly, my circle who have gone deep into meditation have almost all been because they were literally at the bottom in their life and they didn't have anything to hold on to, and this became their savior. But people who are like flying the high life and they're flying cities every day and visiting clients and selling shit and marketing shit and creating things and blah blah and using all technology and Netflixing and blah, maybe they don't even recognize it why they need it. And it's only when it hits them. Unfortunately, that's the only way. And I resonate with that because up until 32 years of my life, I was this overweight kid who treated his body like a dustbin, ate shit, ate odd hours, sleep odd hours. I was committed, but as a physical and mental construct of my body, I generally had done nothing, zero. And then I went through a condition which literally showed me,
With your hip.
with my hip. And I went through surgery, I was on bed rest, I was on crutches. And that's when I transformed myself and got myself in shape. And that's been thankfully a part of me for 10 years. But it took an accident to make me recognize the truth of what I should have known all along.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, that is the way that we all...
Is that a big driver for you to speak to a lot of young people to
I do.
change that early? Does it like
Yes.
inside you that's a driver?
It is because I was like, no, it's unfortunate, or maybe I won't be able to change it, but it's unfortunate that you need an accident to change your life.
Yeah.
Why should you have to wait for one?
Yeah.
And what if, God forbid, that accident happens late in your life or happens never, and you would never be able to see a different side of you that you could have, that helps you a lot more.
Yeah.
So
it was kind of like similar for me also, where I had, so I used to have a drug problem.
Okay.
I used to need to smoke hash every night to go to sleep. It was, for 2 years I tried to get out of it. But the thing with a drug addiction is that it's an addiction. It's very difficult to get out. So I would wake up in the morning, read a paper on, what effects of this drug on my mind, how it's slowing me down, how it's not good for my brain cells. I was doing well at work. I was successful, by all parameters of success, etc. So you kind of like go into the workplace, you forget it. Then you're feeding yourself stuff. So you're using the food to run away from, what's actually bothering you. And then that's when meditation actually came the first time in my life, because I decided to open up to somebody for the first time. My coach, Saloni Suri, I was, she had done a session in Bombay with our teams, and that's when the thing is, when you start doing introspection, that's when parts of your brain start to open up. So I found parts of myself in that session. I said, let's do it in Bangalore. So we went to the team to Bangalore. And that night after the session, when you've introspected again, your neurochemicals are tingling. So I said to her, look, I haven't really spoken to anybody about this, but I am failing at this. I'm struggling with this. And she said one thing to me that night, which changed my life. She said, you are constantly getting high because you're not high enough on your own life. And for different people, it hits differently. But that dialogue hit me. It hit me like a bell. And there's a voice inside me which says, no, that's not true. So and she said, okay, just reflect over this. Try this particular meditation. So it was a guided theta-based meditation.
Nice.
And I did that night. That was the last night I touched a joint.
Wow.
So it's been 6 years of being
That's
clean.
Incredible.
And it's kind of similar. I mean, the journey that 6 years has been rigor the daily practice, go deeper in. And then therefore the reason to start this also and do what we're trying to do, which is that we're trying to see, like, one of the things we are trying to take inspiration from is, you look at the alcohol industry, and it's basically poison liquid, which is being sold in a cool fashion. So I think now that we have some kind of a business context, reason to survive or reason to exist, I think what we're now trying to do is that, like, how do we then turn this, which is a lot of your work also, right? Turn the process of awareness and of the mind cool, and make it very, accessible, aspirational, something that people want to get into. And that's something you do really well. So, like, I'm just like, curious, why did you choose, you choose like cool titles, like you've chosen do epic shit, get epic shit done. So, in this process of making self-awareness cool, what are some of your things that you've learned?
The biggest thing that I've learned is that if you're trying to show people a certain way of thinking or living, you have to speak their language as against the language that you are comfortable with. It just makes so much of sense. And that I think is the biggest fallacy of the world, that our parents, our school, our teachers, they're constantly trying to teach us in their language, expecting us to understand. But we're like, we couldn't care less, man. We just couldn't. And that's why, like, who would have "Do Epic Shit" as the title of a book? Not too many people I know of. And who would it resonate with? Of course, nobody, I would imagine. Well, I shouldn't say nobody, but most people above 35, 40, they'd be like, what kind of audacious and book is this? Like, I would never read something like that. But suddenly there's this generation of 18 to 30 years old who's like, oh, that's the cool thing. I wanna read this and actually show it off. And the nature of the book as well, for that matter, it was not written as a normal book. It doesn't have a start, doesn't have a finish. You can open up any page, read it. It's like an Instagram reel or a story. That's how they're consuming it. Now, and it's funny, I was having this conversation with a dear friend, and we're working on our third book now. And she's helping me with it. And she's a writer, but she's a writer. And it's like, the hardest thing for you will be to not be a writer. I want you to bring in your capability of a writer, but actually write for someone who doesn't read. So forget horizontal lines. I need vertical lines, because the world now is reading vertically. We're not reading horizontally. We don't read left to right anymore. We read up to down or down to up, and we're swiping up, and everything becomes a vertical read. So imagine the book to be a vertical, which is actually in a vertical, but also the content to be vertical as against horizontal. That's how you have to get their attention. And it needs to be fewer words, big ass, bold, speak their language, just speak their language. And I think that's the only reason why I am here, where a lot of people will be like, hey, you're the cool uncle. And I'm like, yeah, I don't mind being called the cool uncle, because I would want to be the 42, 43-year-old speaking to a 22-year-old in a way that it resonates with them, almost dissing all other 40-year-olds because they just don't get it.
Like, see, you're being kind of gracious in a way, because sometimes this dialogue of cool uncle is not coming from a good space. It's it's coming with a sense of judgment. It's coming with a sense of jealousy. Sometimes it's coming with a sense of like, and that jealousy comes from that, hey, I could also do this, but sometimes it comes from that perspective. So when you have hate being thrown at you, and you spoke about imposter syndrome, and that is a deadly cocktail in some sense, right? Because the kind of number of people you reach, you're bound to get on a daily basis some of that. So how do you train your mind for that?
Two things help. One is constant reminder that they know nothing or very little about my life. So what they're reacting to is a microcosm of who I am as an individual. And that's perfectly fine, because if that's their impression of the entire of me, then maybe that impression is right. But that's not the entire of me. It's a very, very, very small part of the entire of me. But number two, which is far more important and has helped me a lot, is I'm actually a sucker of feedback. I love feedback. And I'm constantly amazed at how many people are scared of feedback. Because for me, it's like somebody for free is giving you the optionality of considering something that you can correct in yourself. And if you could correct that, knowing that it needs correction, you would become a better version of yourself. Why the F would you run away from this? Like, it just does not fit into my scheme of things to be running away from it. So when anything comes my way, you call it hate, you call it troll, you call it feedback, blah, blah, blah. As like, my job is to dissociate the sentiment and the emotion of that statement and the message of that statement. So somebody could be, oh, F you, old uncle trying to be cool. No, you better get a grip on X. And I was like, okay, detach the emotion. What is the X? Does this X make sense? If I actually work on it, will I become better? Maybe yes, maybe not. If it's a yes, let's do that. And that's it. Of course, it's easy for me to say it because it's taken years and years for me to get to this point. Meditation really helps. Reflection really helps. Journaling really helps. But I think the biggest help is that you've lived life so much and you've gone through so much that your level of tolerance has just gotten higher, and your level of maturity and wisdom and awareness has also thankfully gone higher.
That's big.
And then you just
I mean, because I'm sure it wouldn't have been easy to arrive at it.
I actually say this, I'm so blessed that I am a content creator at the age of 42, because if I was doing this at 22, I would perhaps be a wreck. Because it's not easy. I don't feel any level of sympathy for all the 20-year-olds trying to become influencers. Like, they have a really hard life, because at that young age, to wrap your head around everything that's happening to you and make sense of it, virtually impossible. So I'm glad that I had 14 years of startup building and all the VC things and all the building of people, hiring of people, maintaining and motivating them, and business models and everything, which just set me up for life and life and life and life. So this is genuinely very trivial. It is, and I say this with all humility, it's very, very trivial for me, because I've done far harder things. And this is just at a far bigger scale. So people think that it's fancy, but it's very easy.
Can I ask you a slightly controversial thing?
Please, of course.
You know, this, what people out in the public, they see कि अश्नीर ग्रोवर ने कुछ बोला अंकुर वारिकू के बारे में, बट अंकुर वारिकू जी ने तो कुछ बोला ही नहीं वापस. इनफैक्ट उन्होंने एक रील ऐसी बनाई है कि he is, you know, in a way praising the company culture, the reel that you made. So he has said some not so nice things, and you have not chosen to react. So is non-reactivity a part of your...
It's my entire life. It's my entire life. The biggest, no, it's not an angst, but the biggest angst, if I were to use that word that Ruchi has against me, is I use this phrase so often. कोई फर्क नहीं पड़ता. And then she says, फिर किस चीज़ से फर्क पड़ता है? And I often tell her, बहुत कम चीज़ों से फर्क पड़ता है. जिंदगी में बहुत 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 कम चीज़ों से फर्क पड़ता है. And mostly those are in my immediate circle, like my family being unwell, unhealthy, going through stress, or being unhappy. I would be deeply affected by it. I've never met Ashneer. I have only known of him from a distance as Bharat Pay and of course the Shack. So I have no reason to even understand why he would say what he has said. And there's certainly no reason for me to react. So there were a lot of media coming in, oh, what's your response? I'm like, I don't know him. He doesn't know me. So it'll be foolish for me to respond. I'm only sparking your eyeballs, but I'm not going to submit,
you know, this
into that.
koi farak nahi padta, that's linked to the nihilism that you spoke about, right? So if, you know, what inspired you to, on that, you know, sometimes things just connect with you.
Sure.
So nihilism would have connected with you. Where did that?
I think it. I was really blessed in life to very early on experience the fact that setting goals, setting big ambitions for yourself, setting targets for yourself is useless. Because I had a great goal for myself. I had a great life planned for myself. I wanted to become a space scientist, work at NASA, blah, blah, blah. And I was working towards that, doing well in it. And none of that happened. Not because something happened, but because I personally realized that's not what I want to do. So I realized that, yeah, I went through all of this to set a goal for myself. I worked hard for it. I was actually close to achieving it. And then in a moment, I realized that it was not something that made me happy. And even though I was good at it, it's not something that I should be doing.
The space science.
Yes. Yes.
You were good at it.
I was really good at it. I was really good at it. It was top of my class. I was on a fast track to complete the PhD. It was all organized.
That's in America when you were.
That's in the US, yes, when I was there. But it just struck me that I wasn't happy. I was just, when you're so good at things, you automatically become a robot, and that's what I had become. I was robotic in my execution and in my delivery. And because I was good at it, it just seemed flawless. But within, I was just shallow, like it was empty. And I didn't feel anything. And that's when I was like, no, I don't want to do something that I am not happy doing. And when that happened, I realized, what is the purpose of setting up a goal? What is the purpose of setting up a target? Like, what am I working towards? And I always had these things, and my mom often says that there were times when you used to ask me very young that, why am I doing this? Why am I going to school? Why am I scoring? क्या हो जाएगा उससे? What will happen if I earn? What will happen? So all these existential questions. But I think at least it didn't take me to a whole new direction where I just gave up. But at the age of 24, to experience that and to have your life reset and then start all over again, it was very clear that I didn't want to set up another goal or another target for myself and then feel disappointed if it didn't happen, or feel falsely elated if it didn't happen. If it did happen, I was like, let's just sign up for a process. Let's just sign up for a way of doing things. And
so if not goals, do you believe that
habits.
we should have habits?
Habits.
Okay. So habits is your, as you walk on the way appears.
Exactly. It's the thing that sets me up for a process. Habits, you do something every day, every week. Like meditation for me is not with any purpose. It's not with any outcome. It's just a habit. Showing up and working out every day, playing tennis every day, reading every day, meeting someone new every week, all of these are just habits. And these habits will compound to take me to some places that I could not have imagined for myself when I started that habit. But the habit.
And what is your take on purpose?
I feel I genuinely believe there is no purpose of why you're doing something. So the only reason, at least I would do it, I can't speak for anybody else and I shouldn't. The only reason why I would do something is because I want to do it. In that moment and over a period of time, I want to do it. So the only criteria that I have is it something that I want? And the answer should be yes. Is it something that will end up hurting or causing pain to somebody else? And the answer should be no. And does it require me to become somebody that I don't want to become? And the answer should be no. And if these three questions are answered in that yes, no, just go ahead and do it. You're not doing it for any eventual goal.
Yeah. But if you don't have a purpose, or you don't have, and I don't mean a purpose in terms of like a tangible commercial objective, or that we will achieve 1, 2, 3. Yes, I get that. Sometimes those are like this, the way I see it is, while I can understand the nihilistic perspective, I'm also able to see the value in, kind of putting stilts on which you kind of support your life around. Because habits also in a way are like stilts that you support your life around, to kind of lift yourself up, or it's a two-way, because it's either fueling you to lift yourself up, or it's, it's fueling you to lift yourself up, and it's training your mind and body in a certain way. And then there is, what one calls the goal-oriented approach, which is almost like stilts that when you're down, you can lift yourself up through that. And that's why also sometimes we journal, right? So I'm curious to understand then, what's your journal process like?
So for me, the thing that I center myself around is a sense of progress. I believe that humans are animals who don't feel as much joy when we achieve something as we feel the joy of progress towards achieving something. Which is why quite often, when we do end up achieving something, we suddenly feel a sense of vacuum. But the journey of achieving that and the sense of progress towards that makes us feel alive.
Yeah.
So what I want to do is not attach myself to an end outcome, but to attach myself to a sense of progress. And that progress has different shapes and form. For example, if I'm creating content on, say, YouTube, I will look at my videos from 2020 and I look at my videos today and I'm like, do I sense progress? Do I feel progress? And if the answer is no, then I will actually, despite the millions of followers I'll have, I'll feel shitty about myself. But if I feel progress, then actually the number of followers would not matter. And it's quite funny, there's so many times when me and my team included, we just lose track of followers or likes or comments or anything like that. And we just like, what do we want to make? What do we want to talk about? Where do we, and that's why we've chosen so many, and I digress, but this point is important, that particularly in our content game, there's so many unorthodox steps that we've taken, and we continue to play along those paths because we weren't asking what will work. We were asking what will make us happy. And we just showed up with that. And if it stopped making us happy, we stopped doing it. And all that we were measuring was a sense of progress. It's the same thing. You go and say work out and you're lifting weights. It's not so much the weight that you're lifting, but the form with which you're lifting, right? So you see your video of doing, say, chest press a year back and doing it now. And is it absolutely the way it should be? And if the answer is yes, then you suddenly feel great about it. But you could be lifting 30 kgs and 40 kgs and you know that you're just doing this and it's not moving any muscle. It's just your sense of doing up and down. Then within your heart, you know that there is no problem.
Now it makes sense because with the koi farak nahi padta meets progress, it's the circle coming together. And progress coincidentally is Sri Aurobindo's favorite. Integral yoga is kind of built on that. So it's good to then see that side because it's both of these things together, which makes it a very complete philosophy. So that's fun. You also spoke about that you're making content and you speak about raising the levels of awareness of people. So in your view and of everything that you've seen in today's generation of young Indians, what are some of the things that you think are lacking awareness or opportunities to increase awareness?
I feel it's three things. If I were to zoom out and truly find these buckets, one is their relationship with time. Second is their relationship with money. And third is the relationship that they have with themselves. These three are where they're struggling the most. And these three are where they need the most help. They have a poor understanding of what is their relationship with time. They feel time is all about being busy and being productive and putting in a lot and getting all of this done. Or it's about these time management techniques and blah, blah, blah. But it's very different from that, at least in my view. Relationship with money, it's just, that's a perpetual question in India, at least. The culture, like you at least come from a culture where money is spoken of, it's celebrated, it's desired, and it's also very well thought through. Most of India is almost like running away from it. Capitalism is a sin, and you're driving towards money is greedy, and it's not something that one should be doing. Even starting a business is considered to be something that others do, and it's too risky, and having a stable job is what's there, and putting your money in fixed deposits is the good thing to do, and blah, blah, blah. So relationship with money and relationship with themselves. Most of us, and this is not just young Indians, it's just most of the world today, we're just struggling with the most fundamental relationship that we ought to have, and that is the relationship we have with ourselves. If we don't have a good one, we'll constantly keep seeking it from others, and we'll put them on a pedestal, and they will of course not be able to deliver because they have no idea what you want from your own relationship, and that's why they'll completely falter, and we will feel disappointed, and that's it. It's a wreck. And you suddenly have a girlfriend and a boyfriend and a wife and a husband, but you really don't have anybody because you never had yourself. And I center, like everything, Guma Firake comes to these three things time and again.
And I've heard you say a few times that you asked who's your best friend, you say I am my best friend, and that's interesting from the point of view of relationship with self. So how does one become one's own best friend?
It's actually very easy if you truly want to. The problem is people don't want to because they're scared of what they will find. At the end of it, we have some sort of a good idea of who we truly are, but we don't want to accept it. We don't want to accept that we are racist. We don't want to accept that we are a miser. We don't want to accept that we are judgmental. We don't want to accept that we are a bigot. We don't want to accept that we don't know how to deal with money. We don't want to accept that we are lazy, whatever those cases are. So we live in this make-believe world where there is an impression of ours that we have fallen in love with, which we hope will continue to deliver. But if you truly want to become your best friend, just ask yourself, how do you deal with your current best friend? Like, what qualifies somebody in your life to be your best friend? What is it that you do for them? Do you hear them out? Do you not call out their bullshit, or do you call out their bullshit? Do you treat them with respect? Do you, if they fail, comfort them? If they fail, ridicule them? Just make a list of all of those things. Attributes, things that you like in them and things that you behave towards them with. And just do the same thing with yourself. Just do it with yourself. It's very easy. It's not simple. Sorry, it's very simple. It's not easy. But the simplicity of how you can achieve that is shocking. But the desire to not do so is even more bewildering, because
and this part of you're speaking about you accept all sides to yourself. So there will be some parts to yourself, and particularly I'm taking this best friend analogy, how you deal with your best friend. Sometimes आजकल क्या होता है, people deal with their best friend in a you will not be kind, you will joke, and you will in a way you will make fun of their weaknesses. Right? So to our peers, we are often kind of mean in that sense, or not accepting fully, or not making space to accept fully. So why do you think that is? Number one. And number two is that, often the sides of ourselves, the shadow sides of ourselves, if you may, the sides which are, if you're in enterprise, you have to be ruthless. If you're, in sport, that, there are some places where you have to be hyper competitive. And sometimes that's not seen as good in the people pleasing sense of things. And that's where people get caught between the two, right? So that's where the relationship itself kind of deteriorates. So I have this side of me, but I'm going to keep it hidden away in the cupboard, because that's not what the world sees as good. So how do we accept that side, and why is it that we are not so kind to our best friends in our everyday?
So my belief is that we're not kind to even the closest people, because we suffer from the notion that the world is a zero-sum game. That we have to constantly ensure we're winning, because that's the only way we will win. Or worse, we have to ensure that somebody else is losing, because that's the only way that there will be space for us to win. And not surprisingly, it stems from the fact that we have been raised by a generation, which is our parents, who did grow up in what was close to a zero-sum game back in the 1980s, 1990s in India. There weren't limited opportunities, and if one won, then that did mean that somebody else lost. And if somebody else lost, that was the only way you could have won. It's not so much anymore. But we were raised on that belief कि यार अपने दोस्तों की एग्जाम में मदद मत करो, क्योंकि अगर वो पास हो गया तो तुम फेल हो जाओगे. And there was no notion of collaboration, or very little of it. So that's the reason why most of us believe that the zero-sum game still exists. It doesn't. The world is now a positive-sum game. For you to win, nobody has to lose. But we in our head will be like, if I show even my best friend down in front of somebody else, then that somebody will lead to believe I am better than this person, which is what I want to achieve, because that's the only way I'll win in life. The person has to be shown down for me to be shown up. Both of us cannot be up. And it's then true for everything. It's true for professional success. It's true for personal relationships. It's true for money. Like, so many people genuinely believe that for me to be rich, somebody else has to be poor. Or if somebody else is rich, that means I cannot be rich. And then that spoils the entire thing. But how do you, so that's one side of it. How do you, to answer your second question, how do you accept or reconcile a side of you that you know is true, but may not be accepted by the world? This statement by itself tells me that you are not your best friend. And the reason is because if you were your best friend, then you would not be questioning how the world sees you. You'll be questioning you'll actually be questioning, who is it that will accept me for who I am? So I often say this in the context of content, but it can be extrapolated to anything else. Don't try to impress anybody. Just do your thing and see who gets impressed. That's a very different way of creating content, or for that matter, creating any visibility in your life. We're constantly trying to say, oh, I have to impress this person, I have to impress this person. And that will force you to become somebody that they want you to become. But if you were to ask, no, I am who I am, and I'm just going to do my thing, and I'll just see, instead of these three are getting impressed, then these three are my tribe. And only for that period of time, because if I change, then maybe these 3 also don't like me anymore, and the original 3 may like me now, and that will become my tribe. So my tribe will keep changing because I am changing as a person, and that is how I would structure that. So if I am my best friend, I know who I am, and I don't want you to be changing yourself to become somebody else to suit my preference. And the same way, if I know that I'm competitive and ambitious and I am a fighter and I never give up, but I'm in this environment where I'm trying to impress people who are people pleasers, or I'm trying to be nice and cushy towards them, then you're playing against your weakness, and you're playing for something that's set up for your weakness, and you're never going to win. It's going to be a disaster. But if you were to find your tribe, wherever it is, which appreciates that vibe of yours, then you will prosper, you will flourish. But it becomes your responsibility to find that.
Got it. And last 2 things I have to ask you. One is with respect to Gen Z's triggers, where you spoke also a little bit about, and I'm asking this more from a selfish perspective, because we actually trying to identify a lot of the triggers that will get people to get into, meditation practice. So what are some of the common triggers you are seeing that which people are getting bothered by?
There are 3 in particular. In no particular order. Number 1 is the fact that they find it extremely hard to deal with rejection. Extremely hard to deal with rejection. And the reason is because when they were growing up, school and college, they were told there is nothing called a rejection. Because the world today is all of these cool schools where you get participation medals, and even the one coming last will get a medal because we want to do, make people feel demotivated and all of that. But no, you're not setting them up for life. Life is not like that. So the minute they go into the real world and they start getting rejected for just normal things, they just lose their shit. And they are not trained to deal with that. So rejection in any shape and form, whether it's personal relationships, professional, and so on. That's number 1. Number 2 is ambiguity. The uncertainty of what lies ahead. Because they are growing up in this instant gratification world, they believe that if they don't hit it off the park in their 20s, life's over. So it's amazing how many people are just not able to deal with the uncertainty of what the 20s brings with it, which is maybe your first job is not going to be the only thing that you do. Maybe your entire career and your industry that you've chosen will have to be changed. Maybe what you knew is redundant now and you have to learn something completely new. Maybe the person that you fell in love with and you thought you would marry or not marry has completely changed, and you have to change yourself because you've also changed and whatnot. They just do not know how to handle that uncertainty, and that keeps hitting them day in and day out. What's going to happen? What's going to happen? So everyone's not like, which direction am I headed to? They're just constantly blaming themselves for where they are in life. And that's not the right way, in my opinion, to lead your 20s. Your 20s should not be about where you are. It should be in which direction are you headed, because that will then take care over time for you. And the third trigger for them is isolation is a strong word, but I'll use that. It's this realization that they're surrounded by online friends or virtual friends, but they really do not have anyone. Truly anyone. It's like the story that you shared where you confided in Saloni for the first time, almost as if you didn't have anyone around you. And it's overpowering, because in moments where they're down, in moments where they do not know how to pick themselves up, they go seeking and they realize there's no one. Because all their WhatsApp friends and Twitter friends and Instagram friends and so on, they just want to be there for the cool times. They don't want to deal with your shit. They just don't want to. And which is why I go back to saying that the only 3 things that matter in life is your relationship with time, money, and yourself. Because if you don't have yourself in that moment, you have nobody. You will never have. And you'll constantly keep looking for somebody. Which is why something like a meditative habit is so critical. Because in that moment, You just go within. You don't go out. You're like, oh, I'm going through shit. I'm going through a breakup. I'm going through a whatever layoff. I'm going through a hard financial crisis and so on. Who can help me? Nah, go within. How can I help myself? And that will only happen through a conversation with your own self. And that's only possible if you've set yourself up for that habit. These three triggers.
Wow, that's cool. All three. And also you made a very good video on your meditation practice.
Yeah.
So in short, your meditation practice, if you could talk to us a little bit about that.
So it went through 3 phases. Phase 1 was when I was trying to learn, and that was about a year or so. 10 minutes every day, no more than that, guided. So it was, I used to use this app called Headspace, and I woke up to Andy, who's the founder of Headspace.
I started with Andy also.
Yeah, I think the world has started with Andy in some shape or form. And he's such a soothing, calming voice. And he's cute in some say as well. He's like a cartoon character in his voice. So I heard him for a year every day for 10 minutes. That told me that I could do it for 10 minutes with all the chatter in and contain it. Then phase 2, which lasted for almost 3 years, was 10 minutes with no guidance. So just listen to sound. And that sound was nature, because I felt like that was my thing. So it was birds, water, air. So wind and water and birds. So that was 10 minutes. Then I did another year or so when I went from 10 to 20. And for the last 4 years or so, it's 30 minutes every day. The sound of air, water, and birds with a bell that rings every 10 minutes. So after 3 bells, I know my time's up. I do not move at all, not even an inch. And I do not feel any pain. I do sit with my back rested, so I don't sit free. But I sit cross-legged on my sofa and just do it. And I know that I can do it for hours.
Stillness is cool.
Yeah, stillness is cool. Stillness is absolutely cool. It's just wonderful. The best part is I know that I'm active and I'm awake and I can feel my heartbeat and so on. And my smartwatch registers, if not the entire 30 minutes, but certainly 25 minutes as light sleep. My heartbeat is down to almost 50, 54 at best. And the technology thinks of it as I'm sleeping because I'm so still and so well rested.
Yeah. One of the things that we have the opportunity to do as we are building this is we get to speak to neuroscientists, and we get to speak with, it's fascinating because we get to speak with all the different schools of meditation, and we speak with the scientists. So one of the things that has left an impact on me is that, there is actually 2 parts broadly of our brain. Through the spinal cord, our eyes, our hands, our mouth, all of that is connected through the spinal cord to the central lobe of the brain. And then you've got the prefrontal cortex, which is basically where the seat of character sits. Your intuition, your character. If you say you can see things, like you can see the fact that habits is what makes you, that's all what comes here. And an integrated person is where the central lobe meets the prefrontal cortex. So your thoughts is equal to your actions. And what meditation is doing with the science is it's actually increasing the neural pathways between these 2 parts of the brain. So that's really the fascinating part, to be able to actually dabble into research of this sort. And, you've spoken about breath-oriented meditation. And what we've discovered is there's so many different schools across the world, and that's what we're trying to do. That's what I know that you love Calm, and it's a great app. I've used it a lot. And what we are trying to do is that we have, because there are multiple schools, each person will resonate with a meditation practice differently. So the way we see ourselves is bring as many people on the path. And then if they want to go deeper into one school or the other, they can. But broadly, we see that there's breath, there is mantra. And mantra is another fascinating. I heard in your video that you said that I didn't want to do any religious-oriented practice. So I was curious actually to ask that also. Like, why did you say that?
No, because for me, and of course the flippant thing was, for me, it's in my head that mantra will be religious. So Om for me is not a mantra. Om is a universal sound. But if I suddenly have to chant something, then it suddenly becomes a construct where I just feel somebody's hidden agenda is lying. And I was like, I don't want to even think about that for a second.
Yeah.
So what's the most universal thing? It's just wind, air, water. And that just...
We've just released a mantra, Om mantra chanting series.
Lovely. I'll check that out.
So what we have done is, and actually that is what we were trying to do, like, because Om is a universal sound. Now, the thing with mantra, when we spoke to people, they're like, I can't connect with it, so I can't do it. So how do we speak to them in the language that helps them to connect with it? So over 7 days, we've broken down the meaning of the Om mantra. So it's you are chanting for 21 times, you hear a bit about it, you chant a bit more, and that's when it ends up. So the guy who's done it is also called Om, coincidentally.
Oh, wow.
Fantastic guy.
Fantastic.
He's the youngest MD of Lloyd's Bank in the UK.
Wow.
So he's 36 years old now,
Wow.
35 yet. And he's the youngest MD of business banking for the largest, their version of SBI.
True.
Gone from here to
Lovely.
London and done it. And he's a Vedic scholar.
Wow.
So he's done that series. So we are just so lucky that all these collaborators are coming together. And we're just trying to find the styles, So the chanting and the way he's explained it, mantra being manatrayate iti mantra, which is, about resonance and your mind one with yourself is what the mantra is doing. So again, it's about that. And then it's going deeper. So the breath, the mantra, actually the Sufis, how the Buddhists focus on the breath, the Sufis focus on the heart. So heart is another, focus that we are seeing. And it's so fascinating as we are studying different cultures and religions across the world, how the dots tie together. So that's the most fun part of doing this.
I can totally imagine that. It's so fascinating.
It's really fascinating. And, even Buddhism, for example, with the breath, one is the breath, of course, and Vipassana is inspired, or rather breath work draws all of its inspiration from Vipassana. But even the Buddhism practice of in your mind, how you, focus the levels from gratitude to compassion to oneness. Yeah. And you are somebody who's at that level of oneness. So, actually over this last period of 1 hour that we've been speaking, I can't help but marvel that the work that you're doing is actually making an entire generation really grow in their awareness.
That's the hope.
It's not the hope, it's happening. You are too humble. You call yourself a Honda City, which is, I don't agree with that. But
no offense to Honda City.
It's a great car. But in the relative scheme of things, it's great. And you can see that people are really resonating with what you're doing. So I think for us, it's it's such an honor to have somebody like you almost as a beacon of inspiration, if you may, in terms of this is, I know we don't want to compare and we don't want to say goals and best and all of that, but step by step as we walk on the page, this is where it could go.
Yeah.
So thank you very much.
Thank you. I had a fantastic time. Thank you so much for having me. And all the best. All the best. Thank you.
What a phenomenal personality. You can see the shine and radiance in this man. I think it's not by chance. It's sheer hard work and a lot of awareness that this man has reached where he has. It was extremely inspiring to watch this one, and we look forward to having Ankur back on this podcast and collaborating with Ankur in some way or the other in the future.